And welcome back, everybody, to the February AGE Open. We are in the thick of things now as our classic constructed competitors are throwing hands left, right, and centre. I'm Mitch Leslie, joined by Sam O'Byrne. We had a question in the chat. At what point do we get to see acclaimed national champion Charles Dunn? It's right now. We're going to bring him in here. Now, for those unfamiliar with Charles's preference or play style, Sam, how would you describe him as a competitor?
I would describe him as kind.
Mm-hmm.
I would describe him as intuitive.
Yes.
Very smart.
Yep.
And plays
Very well spoken.
Very well spoken. A talented dude, game designer at Blizzard.
Yep.
And plays some slow, grindy decks if I've ever seen him.
He is like the Kenny G of Blood players. You know what I mean?
Slow jazz.
Again, which no surprise to me against someone who's like as a game designer and developer, really likes to dig into like understanding value. And I think Charles always, to me, has looked like he's lent towards like decks that would give him a deterministic outcome in a lot of situations, right? And Oldham was absolutely the kind of deck that could do that in many cases. And his Bravo list, which I have here, and it's cold to the touch somehow still, again, is, like pretty classic, but we're talking a deck list that features Fate for Scene, Oasis, Sigil, Sink Below, Imperial Warhorn, Unmovable, Staunch Response, all at red. So his attack actions at red are Command and Conquer, Crippling Crush, and Enlightened Strike. There's a Spinal in there as well. So very defensive deck. Now, if those of you watching Battle Hard at Hartford, that the first round of coverage that saw Chris Ciali play Bolton against Bravo, a similar feel, I think. Another very slow sort of deck that really wants to sort of freeze out the game, if you'll excuse the pun. It's a definitely throwback to the Oldham era. His opponent is someone who I actually only met recently. We've had him on coverage already. Colin Eriksen, young fellow who has put a Kassai list together. Even just talking with Justin, obviously, as the director, he's mentioned that this guy's played like 200 plus games on Tell. He's just been absolutely grinding out. The guy has great intuition. I sat next to him drafted the other week down at Odyssey Games. They're really switched on guy, and so far he's like putting up some serious results. We've already seen him on camera. And a Kassai versus Bravo game, it's not going to be explosive necessarily. It's definitely not going to be particularly fast, but there are going to be a lot of really important inflection points that we'll get to examine as the Warrior player looks to try and get some value, get some gold and copper generation around what is going to be an absolute just avalanche of defense reactions.
I just watched Colin take down Alejandro in this last round. It came down to the last 4 cards in both players' decks, and Colin literally actually only had 2 cards left.
So beat Victor, right?
Beat up a Victor and was able to get a blue overpower just to finish the job. But that hot streak really puts in work when they have only the attack actions. I think the story of this game is going to be different. There isn't going to be the same offensive pressure from the Bravo here that the Victor was able to present. There isn't going to be the same amount of kind of disruption in consistency, I think, that the Victor deck was trying to do so. But the question is, when and how will Colin on Kassai be able to force the damage through to get the gold, get the copper? Because there is some real game with Raise an Army if you can get there. But the question is, can Colin work through the defense reactions, through the equipment, with enough time, with enough cards left in deck to finish out the game?
Yeah, but we're still in timed rounds, first and foremost. And of course, like, just the sheer amount of defense. This is the kind of deck you wish you ran Burdens of the Past against. Like, it is that bad. And that card is pretty narrow. This is the deck it is designed to be played against, a blue 3 block that no one's really running right now, because so much of the metagame is about like either playing mid-range or racing your opponents when you sort of can here. So for Colin, I don't know if anyone has told him that his opponent is the current reigning United States national champion.
That's true.
Maybe we don't.
Just let him just play it out.
You know what I mean? But again, that will be a huge challenge. And obviously, Charles, recently obviously sort of moving to the area, has become a local, which is great. I think previously up in Ohio. So the SoCal scene has leveled up considerably. Not that we didn't already have an absolute crap ton of Guardians out here. Another one added to their ranks, possibly one of the finest here. So I think that really speaks to just the level of competition here. You've got Alan Huang there, who even dropped a game, I think, at one point. So we've got really great Guardians. And of course, Marcus Brown on Victor's doing really well so far. Alejandro Cuevas as well. So that top 8 is going to be rather brawny, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the little trifecta. The set just came out. We're seeing the Warriors, we're seeing the Brutes, and we're seeing the Guardians really put up numbers. I think the players are getting ready to roll here, so we probably should get ready and jump down into the game. Let's take a look. Charles Dunn, your U.S. national champion on Bravo Showstopper versus Colin Eriksen. A little new up-and-comer, and when I say little, I do mean very tall and lanky,
It is tall, yeah.
on Kassai of the Golden Sand. Colin has a game plan. He just took down a Guardian in this new victor list. The question is, will Charles Dunn's defensive prowess be enough?
I will say Colin reminds me, again, probably because of his youth and also how switched on he is, of like a Brody Spurlock.
Oh, yeah.
Very, like, extremely switched on, very intuitive, and understands the game very well. Of course, this is a Crown of Dominion Kassai list, so you already start with a gold. Charles Dunn opens the game here with a Titan's Fist swing, and we'll see a Oasis Respite spent.
Sigil of Solace going to follow it up from Charles here, so he's heading on up to 43. Did a, not quite a filter, but you did get to put a Nourishing Emptiness to the bottom of the deck. If you're Colin here, hopefully by the time you get to that second cycle, you've banished all other attack actions out of that graveyard to the Kassai ability, and that Dominate can be a good way to push some damage through in second cycle.
Such a cheeky pick here, and I love Colin's deck building, a Gorganian Tome in this list for Kassai. And you won't see it in every list, of course, but it's being played really infrequently, right? Obviously, the risk of Gorg Tome is your opponent has one and plays it later and will draw up an extra card. But again, it satisfies that condition for Kassai to cheapen the weapons here. So this will be a chip in with a hot streak, and yeah, be the Rampart of the Ram's Head offered up to block here. It will be hard, I think, for Colin to sort of lead, with hot streak getting go again, just based on its text. He will have to assist it with Blade Runners like this one.
Yeah, you're going to see probably Colin checking some graveyard later in this game to see how many defense reactions have we worked through. Are there mostly attack actions left? These blue block threes that Guardians are so able and often, running, that where that hot streak is going to get a little more value late game. They're going to get a staunch response with those. Talk about it, folks. You got the Rampart of the Ram's Head into the staunch response, even though the Blade Runner is going on that Centauri Saber. No +1 to any attack actions.
Yeah, but you feel okay about that, right? Staunch obviously such a chunky defense reaction, but with that Blade Runner +3, you actually feel quite happy sort of expending it now and just send back a CNC of your own here. Not a great, Colin in this matchup, he got 15 value out of his Valiant Dynamo against Alejandro Cuevas in the previous game. 15, that is what? More than 2.5 husks, for Christ's sake. It's insane. Here, though, maybe a little bit harder to find it unless it's, you're throwing it in front of the Titan's Fist if it gets that +1. So here's a block and Oasis to eat up the CNC.
And look at that, both players sitting above 40 because technically, Colin was technically lower than Charles at that point. So the one from the Oasis going to trigger. We're just going to go ahead and put into the Iron Song versus into the Hot Streak, once again threatening that go again if Charles does decide to block with an attack action card. But we know Charles got a sink in his arsenal, got another staunch in hand. That ain't happening anytime soon, my brother.
Again, I love Iron Song versus. I didn't really appreciate it at first, but giving yourself a non-hit, like as a Dory player, I say that is really powerful because obviously if you're only attacking once per turn, there's no text on Dawnblade virtually. If your opponent sees your hand being too small, if you're on a 1 card, having the ability to create a non-hit is really important. And here as well, like you want to incentivize a block because hey, if you see an attack action thrown in front of that hot streak, you get a ton of value. You might not get the courage, but you get to swing with the Saber here. So blocked out by Charles, sink below expended here, and Colin will be keeping track of those defense reactions, but my boy, don't know how many Charles is packing.
And that's the power of this Bravo list. Even in a deck that is so designed to be so defensive, the Bravo ability to just put Dominate on a big attack, going to be huge here. Do we have a defense reaction in the arsenal for Colin, or is this just going to be a 3-block placed in front of it? See if any armor goes in there as well. Looks like at least a Blood in the Hands is going to get in there on defense.
Yeah, again, this is a card that likely is just a blocking card in this matchup. I mean, you only have probably 6 to 9 sources of copper generation in this deck. Outland Skirmish, red and yellow, plus Spores of War. So realistically, your chance of having that amazing 6, damage, rather 6 copper blood in her hands turn rather is not really going to be a factor. And yeah, if this Fatigue Bravo list is playing up against a deck that's comparably slow or grindy, you have the option, if you keep a fat hand, to send a dominated attack like that across.
Yeah. Hot Streak going to be the lead once again from Colin. A really nice new addition to these Warrior lists, presenting a different kind of problem, especially in the late game. It was the thing that basically got Colin the game against Victor the game ago because all he had left in that deck were attack action cards, and he couldn't, as soon as the Hot Streak got the go again, those Centauri Sellswords would finish the job. So the Blade Runner here then going to go ahead and bump up the Centauri Saber as well.
Pretty handy here. +2 on the Centauri Saber, so you're presenting 4 here, with obviously Rampart already being committed. Does he get a 2-card block from Charles? So Colin like, okay, finally making something happen. And in the swing comes down. If this is buffing your second swing, you get a nice little +3 there. So we're heading to 8 with the help of that Blade Runner buff. So hey, getting some damage in there. The moments, obviously, you need to do damage to the Bravo player. It's really important. But more importantly than that is Colin needs to find a way to secure the on hits. And you'll probably only see him activate that Kassai ability unless he's pretty damn sure he can force some damage through.
Yeah, I gotta imagine some of that armor is gonna have to be a little more busted and broken before Kassai is really activated, unless there are some powerful attack reactions set up in the arsenal, set up in the hand for Colin here. I know he has game plan into Guardians. I don't know if he's really ever faced an opponent quite as staunch as Charles Dunn before.
Yeah, I was so excited to watch Shin Inoue play a game at the Battle Hearted in Los Angeles as I'd realized he was actually attending the event. He's a Dory player I sort of follow. And I walk over and he's playing against Charles on Oldham. I'm like, well, I'm going to go get a coffee. Here his commanding performance comes down. So he's going to buff Colin's next attack by 3. And also say to Charles, if you dare to put an attack reaction in front of this, you can kiss your arsenal goodbye.
Yeah, attack action's going to go ahead and just blow up that arsenal upon defense. Such a cool new card from the new set here. So instead of any attack actions, definitely going to start with the Rampart of the Ram's Head and then probably just throw that Sink Below in hand if I was not mistaken. Let's see, we do have another Blade Runner and critically a couple yellows headed to the graveyard early.
Yeah, so we've at least secured Go Again here with a pump on the next attack, but yes, no attack action being used to block. Again, this is something that you sort of are aware of when you throw this out. Your opponent will either not block you or throw a defense reaction in your way. Colin obviously much preferring the initial one in the swing. We're getting damage, Charles. I know it hurts your soul, mate, but attack reactions, that's how they work. So Colin happy to get use out of it in the swing because on small hands, you can't guarantee attacking with both weapons. So getting those inner swings and actually getting value in terms of life, damage out of those cards early in the game feels really good.
Fair amount of those 0 for 4s have already come out from Charles here in terms of the Sink Belows. And in terms of Colin's deck texture, we have seen a number of Blade Runners already be thrown down and 2 in the swing. So it's going to be really like counting the threats that Colin's able to conserve, especially the Go Again potential, and then counting the defensive capabilities that Charles runs through. It's going to be very end of deck scenario on this game, folks, as we come to the end of it. It looks like this Nourishing Emptiness, I don't think he's blocked with the CNC or anything like that. I know he does run him in the list, so this might be dominated.
He probably wouldn't play it unless he had a clear discard pile. We're going to see the Oasis Respite here drawn out, and that Warmonger's Diplomacy, thank you. Also getting put out in front there. So, again, multiple copies of Nourishing and other attack actions in this deck because Colin can obviously clear the way by banishing them from his sort of discard pile. And I've seen Colin today not have a weapon attack, not have any interest in trying to get gold tokens, but needing to clear out his graveyard to make sure Dominate is secured. This time, though, because he doesn't attack twice in the previous turn, can't refresh that Valiant Dynamo and doesn't choose to block. So we got a 5-card hand coming back from Colin.
And our first Kassai of the Golden Sand activation of this game. 2 reds, 2 yellows, headed to the Banished Zone. If a weapon hits this turn, we're making a gold. We already have one thanks to that beautiful Marvel Crown of Dominion. Got to imagine that, Raise an Army is a huge part of the game plan here. And this Outland Skirmish, going to go ahead.
All right, so we have +3, and the next attack will generate a copper. To say nothing about Go Again here, but you've seen the Kassai player pitch a Blade Runner, so you know full well she's going to have Go Again from another card sat in the hand. And yeah, Raise an Army, right? In a matchup like this here, making it impossible for your opponent to sort of fatigue you out. You keep them on board, you keep hitting, you keep asking for cards, and it's a great. It's like I guess it was like Chain used to use Ursa, I think, to try and sort of win the games like that. It's very similar. This gets 2 cards, so. But Colin would not activate Kassai ability if he didn't have a way of getting around this. And there it is, Blade Flurry. +2 this attack, +2 the next one. It's the first 0 for 4 attack reaction that Warrior has sort of received. That's, I guess puncture. But yeah, it has that slight condition of being spread over 2 hits.
Yeah, and look at this. The run-through going to get the Go Again. We're making the copper and we're making the gold thanks to Kassai. This is huge for Colin. I said he wasn't going to do it until the armor was worked through, but Colin knows this deck better than me, and he said, I think I can sneak this through. I don't think you have the defense reactions, nor do you want to commit it. And this Hawk Streak now coming for 6. Got to put a couple more cards if you're Charles here and you want to make sure that no more copper is created. Is Outland Skirmish the next time, or is it... It may just be the next time, right?
Yes, it's not everyone. So Spoils of War is every weapon hit will generate copper.
For sure.
Atlas Skirmish is just the one here. But again, you have the +2 from the run through, which is in this deck, for all intents and purposes, it's a yellow Blade Runner, right? The reason why run through so exciting is because it doesn't just care about one-handed weapons, and that's why Dory players snapped it up, and the Classic Battles deck skyrocketed in price. That and glistening, yeah.
So this is huge here for Colin. He has made that second gold. I think he's really going to be looking to find like the third. If he can find 3 to 4 gold and then raise an army, that is when this starts to get pretty nuts in terms of what the Kassai deck is able to put onto these defensive decks in terms of damage that isn't cards, that doesn't take cards from your deck, that just takes, you have to continue to find the go again. So that's why we've been tracking those Blade Runners, the run-throughs. We'll see how much of that Colin is able to conserve when cards like Command and Conquer look to threaten the arsenal. Potentially the defense reactions, the go-agains, or the raise-in armies that lie within.
And we are going to block with 2 cards here. Colin really priced into protecting whatever is sat in that arsenal. So that's something to sort of keep an eye on. I think Colin, would he want to... Yeah, okay. So it's actually Command and Conquer of his own here. Happy just to throw this one back. Not a hell of a lot else to do, right? There was a Remembrance and like a hit and run. A bit of a dirtly hand.
And 2 defense reactions in the hand there for Charles, I believe. So you can't play either of those. Also, critically on that last turn, 2 go-again enablers also that were thrown to the graveyard. So I'm going to be tracking that this game because I know that Colin, he's trying to find a way to make some sellswords. But those sellswords don't attack for you until you've shown them that you're willing to fight for them too. You got to swing a sword first before they're willing to take up arms for their leader. So he's already worked through a number of cards here. The life total is less important than the cards in deck and the texture of the deck.
Charles here really has to think about it. He's got a blue Disable there. Crippling Crush also in hand. So making the 2-card block here is not the issue. It's that Charles rather would really rather be using defense reactions for an attack of this sort of magnitude and maintaining deck size.
Remembrance as well for Colin. Looks like he runs just the one. Headed now to, significantly into our second cycle. But once we grab it, we can get some more go-again enablers. We can get some more, if we needed to block with Raise an Army or cards like that. This is going to be a Titan's Fist just for 3 as the Staunch Response and the Fate Foreseen, I believe, are going to head to the bottom as well for Charles. So.
I like that from Colin. He sees a 3 coming in, but says, yeah, look, I can leak a couple of damage here and get Dynamo value and still go for it. Spoils of War, commanding performance. So we're looking at +5, go again. If you block with an attack action, you lose your arsenal. If I hit, I'm making a lot of copper.
Yeah, very, very cool coupling up of these cards because you don't want to let them get 2 copper at all. But if you block with an attack action, all of a sudden that arsenal gets destroyed. So what defensive piece is Charles able to find? Is this finally when we're going to start cashing the equipment block if we are the Bravo player here?
Maybe. I mean, it's a break point. You get 2 copper per hit this turn, right? And at that point, your blood on her hand strategy actually becomes viable, becomes live, right? Civic Steps is going to be thrown out here because we're already looking at an attack with go again. So, we know that Colin's not going to be able to make use of the Quicken token here. He won't have anything to do after another Saber hit. So Hold the Line comes out. I do love that one. It's a cute little addition, but won't be turned on in this case. So Colin, gets that Quicken token. Yeah, Hot Streak does have go again for what it's worth. And again, still buffed by that Spoils of War effect, being an annoying 2 damage that still threatens to generate 2 copper.
Sigil of Solace going to gain 3 life for Colin here. Or for Charles, excuse me. And then, going to have to give that 3 block. Open up the arsenal for whatever's left. No copper generated. Commanding performance. Was not able to destroy the arsenal, but again, that +3. And it was nice for Charles there. His hand lined up rather nicely to get around it, but I just like that card so much. I think it's such an interesting effect, and it's not an on, hit effect. It's an on block, which is so cool.
It's very warrior.
It's very warrior, yeah.
Because you are still giving agency to your opponent. You're still offering them a choice. But again, a situation like that was almost damned if you do and don't because of the Spoils of War combining with it. And that's what warriors on big hands, they tend to put you in a position where there is no right answer when they have a combination of those effects. Yeah. Sync here, going to be eating up that Titan's Fist swing. Colin, that's in the pitch zone, believe it or not. Yep. Glenn, looks like another, was that a Spoils?
Yeah, another Spoils.
All right, still threatening copper generation. Colin,
third one played this game? Third Spoils?
At least the second.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Again, Colin running very low on sort of copper threatening on hits here, but it may force Charles to block in like a below rate fashion.
Yeah,
which is important.
Looks like there's an unmovable. Looks like there's an Oasis Respite and a Tunic, which is huge for Charles here on this Spoils turn. Number of cards in hand, and of course the Spoils giving the go again to the Centauri Saber. Let's see how Charles wants to try to hold up the defenses, hold the line. We've seen one played. We know it's a huge part of his identity in this game.
Yeah, and I think every hand that Charles draws up, at least one defense react. You can expect
Oh, yeah,
to see
for sure.
there. He has 3 copies of Hold the Line, which is it blocks for 2, but gets it prevents the next 3 damage done if your opponent's drawn 2 cards this turn, right? It's like a balance of justice effect on a D react. Something that people maybe overlooked. I don't think it was definitely the highlight of Dusk Till Dawn, but a very relevant effect in the world of Blood Rush Bellows and stuff like that. People cracking a bunch of gold maybe, or Steelblade Supremacy, bunch of stuff like that. So here's that unmovable.
Unmovable going to block out the Centauri Saber, and then just the Tunic into the Command and Conquer. We're going to go ahead and block 4 of that, utilizing the Tunic, interestingly, even though we still kept the Oasis Respite, just valuing 1 point of life on this turn that much and just resetting the Tunic. That's interesting from the national champ here. I would think that Tunic counter is so valuable with an Oasis in the arsenal, but he certainly knows better than me.
Yeah, like I guess I think he's just happy enough paying for an Oasis, pitching a card from his hand. He, maintains that deck density and can also like eat up another threatening on here. We probably are down to like 3 copper generating effects left in Colin's deck at this point here, but this is still a good +3, and the hot streak he's going to open with instead here. So that means that he's going to have a go again enabler either way, but he might be holding a Blade Runner either to Arsenal, or he might want to do something after a Centauri swing.
Looks like Charles going to go ahead and just... but that's why, because the Rampart of the Rancid, he's always pitching a card anyway, so he's happy to just go ahead.
Have leftover. It's that old him math
Yep.
right?
That Oasis is going to do just fine.
Okay. So make sure you are not generating copper there. Sam and I reach for our phones at the same time to check the exact same thing.
How does Outland Skirmish still affect this attack? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
That's exactly what I'm doing. So it's the next time a weapon hits
this turn. Okay, that's what I thought. So this Centauri Saber is still threatening the copper.
Yep. And I like the hit and run here as well. Getting a +2 and giving go again. Not that it's relevant in this situation, but pretty nice in between your sword swings.
Yeah, just going to go ahead and really try to make sure we get the copper. Do still have the 1 block on the Rampart of the Rance head. Can pay another time because we have... Or we can't pay another time, but can go ahead and...
Yeah, you break the chain with the hit and run.
Yeah, that's not the attack
It's a
reaction.
non-attack action, so it's something you really want to avoid doing if you can, but Colin maybe favoured the sort of the +1 there, but I mean, yeah, something in this matchup you stay extra aware of when dealing with that Rampart.
Colin Eriksen sitting at 29 to Charles Dunn's 30. Both players here 4-0, and it looks like it's time for our second Kassai activation of the game. Let's go ahead and get some attack actions out of there.
Those 2 attack actions out.
Let's get those attack actions out of there for the Nourishing Emptiness. We saw at least 1 go to the second cycle. As I said, Colin's going to have to be checking that graveyard out there at this game. See how many D-reacts Charles has played. Colin, one thing we've all learned, he's somewhat new to the scene still. Been playing only, I think, like 3 or so months. October was when he started and quickly kind of fell in love with the game. Credits Majin Bay and from his Legend of Runeterra days, Collins, is getting him into Flesh and Blood. But as soon as you talk to this dude, it's so clear how intelligent he is. When we had him on stream earlier, he's very, very with it, as you said, very switched on. And so you got to imagine at this point, even though he's still somewhat new to the game, he has sniffed out exactly what Charles Dunn is trying to do and has built his own game plan for the game on this, as it's been played.
So it's a harder final in the pitch there. Just being proxied there by Colin. Gain himself a life, bringing it back up to parity here. And this has attracted the Crown of Providence block from Charles. I see an Oasis Respite in hand as well. We're sinking away that Arsenal here. Looks like we replaced that with an E-Stroke.
Another Blade Runner.
Yep, going to see all
and
9
the Blade Flurry. We're going to get some damage across on a turn where we have, in fact, activated Kassai. Question is, can Charles go ahead and block it out? He does have that Oasis. Does he want to pitch a whole card to do so? He hasn't used the Rampart yet.
It's a no-on hit with this, I guess, the Kassai effect, right? So I think it might be worth throwing like an Oasis here.
You need gold if you're in Colin's seat to actuate that Raise an Army plan. So the question is...
Letting him go to 3 gold will be scary for Charles, yeah.
We are going to go ahead and grab the Oasis, but there's only 2 cards left in hand, and one of them's in a Sigil of Solace. So that doesn't block for anything. Here comes a Centauri Saber. Can we get our 3rd gold if we're Colin Eriksen here? Can we find money to pay our sellswords? We've got the Blade Runner. We've got the Blade Flurry. This one's going to be pretty big.
Yep.
Oh, but
7.
the blue...
Yeah, the blue, baby.
The unmovable is going to be enough to cover it up.
Will he follow it up with that Sigil of Solace there? That would be the 9 life gain from that in total. No. So Whatever card he's holding on to there, he's going to maintain. It is a sigil, yeah, gorgeous looking thing.
Never need to play the sigil if it's going to hit your arsenal anyway. Let your opponent think it's something, anything but a sigil, and then at any point you can
I
just
love it
play
when
out.
it's a sigil and they throw a CNC at you and you laugh.
Yeah.
All right, Tunic tick up here for Colin as Charles shipped the turn back with just the one card. Okay, Slice and Dice. Colin only running the red Slice and Dice in this particular list, buffing that first attack by 1, buffing the second attack by 3. So always nicer on the backside there. And we'll make sure that hot streak is given go again by Blade Runner, which also will confer a +1 buff to that next sword attack.
Yeah, so 1, 2, 3 from the Slice and Dice, 1 from the Blade Runner. So I believe this would be in Atari for 6. Non-attacks being put in front of it, and the Rampart of the Ram's Head, and then the Hold a Line to finish it off. Looks like that might be a Steel Blade Shunt headed to the arsenal there for Colin. So we're moving through some go-again enablers. Colin's going to need to keep them in the deck for once he finds that third gold, if and when. You need to make sure you have enough go-again to let those sell.
Yeah, we've seen so many of them, right? Obviously, Spoils would do it for you. All 9 of the Blade Runner, which is pretty common to keep them in here. We have like the run-through, right? There are a few options there, but you'll eventually run a little bit lean on those. The deck's made to have 1 a turn, ideally. Red Shunt used here, blue Shunt pitch. So we're starting to, work through these. And again, in this kind of matchup, you really want to try and make sure you shunt that weapon all the time. Unless there's like you're concerned about a dominated sort of like on-hit effect coming your way, you want to get like, I don't know how many, you want to get like your 5, 6 points of extra value off those, especially if you can throw them off a Tunic. Here's Spoils. That's the last one. The last Spoils of War in the deck here to give that +2 and threaten 2 copper on hit for both weapons this turn.
Also, sword is free thanks to that Gorganian tome played at the beginning of the turn.
Yep, that's why we did not have to pitch for weapons.
And a Fate Foreseen from hand here for Charles. Going to go ahead and cover it up. 1 card left in the hand here for Colin. Just pitch it into the verses, into the hot streak. We've seen this before.
Still, again, with that with that buff, and I don't think we had the chain broken here, so we didn't even see Rampart used earlier on those, so not so much of an issue. Charles can throw that in front if he needs to. Also, yeah, like Hold the Line, I guess, is fine here. You aren't getting you aren't getting 5 points on that defense reaction, but it's completely appropriate here to eat that up. And again, we are stopping Kassai from generating gold and copper. That is going to be her undoing.
Warmonger's Diplomacy headed to the bottom of the deck. A nice non-attack action you can put in front of both the Hot Streak and the Centauri Saber. I'm curious, looking at the blue pitches here for Charles. You got Buckling Blow, Choke Slam, Cranial Crush, Debilitate, Disable, Macho Grande, Thunderquake. That is where later in this game we're going to have to start really seeing how many blues are left in the deck and how many of them are attack actions for these cards like the Hot Streak, like the Centauri Saber at that point in the game.
And Charles wants to spend the first cycle playing defensively, right, when it makes sense. Then you run through that, you've got a lot of your reds that you've still been pitching away. Even like your cards like your Thunderquake are completely reasonable at blue, right? Just to throw some nice damage in. So this would be, like Dynamo and card block is pretty reasonable. Colin again says, no, I think I'll let you have that. So Sigil comes out here. We saw, I don't know if you saw it. I don't know if Colin saw it.
Yeah, that's the main question.
That was a staunch response almost flipped onto the table.
Yeah, so if Colin was able to just see, Charles accidentally went and flipped that staunch response, that's not Colin's fault. No. And so if he is able to take a look at that and make sure, he keeps that in his head, he knows what's in the arsenal. And when you throw a Command and Conquer threatening an arsenal, that is a D-React.
That's so rude.
Yeah, let's see.
He has a Remembrance in hand as well, Charles, plus another D-React. So
I think, is that 2 D-Reacts? 2
2
D-Reacts, a Remembrance, and an Enlightened Strike. We might see some equipment block thrown in front of this.
Oh, God. It's so uncomfortable for Charles to have to equipment block an attack that doesn't generate Colin copper or gold.
One of the most powerful cards in this deck right now for Colin is going to be this Command and Conquer, given the amount of D-React that exists in Charles's list. He's able to put a staunch to the bottom, which is nice, but that must feel good if you're Colin to see those equipments be put in front of this.
Yeah, I mean, Charles tips his hand, right, pitching a staunch in order to activate the Rampart of the Ram's Head here. But having a look at the girth of that stack of cards there for Colin, start to get a bit concerned. We're running a little bit low on gas in general here. There's a second swing and a Slice and Dice in hand here. I think Colin probably just took the 3 because at this point you kind of need to keep full grips and try and play off your arsenal as much as humanly possible now. So Charles is going to bring back a Tear Asunder, a Crippling, and a Command and Conquer. So you can already see Charles gearing up for that second cycle where he wants to be the aggressor.
It is fascinating when you watch these fatigue-oriented games where you feel like you've just seen Colin lay card after card, attack after attack, buff after buff, and yet he sits at 25 while Charles is at 32. The power of these fatigue lists, the power of these defensive lists to be able to just use so many cards so efficiently, so defensively, and still bonk you with the friggin' hammer.
Yep.
You know? Slice and dice now.
All right. So 4 value of attack power there, distributed across both weapon swings now. Colin checking the graveyard just to make sure. Yeah, okay. So again, we see the Blade Flurry, rather the second swing in Colin's hand. So again, we're only going for a banish when we can kind of guarantee to some degree, or at least really threaten one of those sort of on hits. And hey, getting the 3 gold, 3 cell swords.
Huge.
If you still have enough go again generation in your deck, it's a problem. All of a sudden, Bravo becomes vastly less efficient.
Yeah. Also, I do want to just point out a little bit. It's Findell Spring Tunic for Colin. We've probably discussed this earlier in the day, but not the new Grains of Blood spill.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think this is really about getting value from your shunts, because all of a sudden a red shunt is a 0 for 7. Like it's a 1-card 7. Excuse me. So like, Warriors. When I see Tunic out, I'm expecting Steelblade Shunt to be in the list here. Now, whether it's sort of appropriate against this list, I'm fine with it, because it allows Colin to sort of threaten the damage from Shunt on a weapon attack and not have to tear apart his hand to pay for the Shunt, and still let him come in with like 4 cards and actually try and get over this just defensive wall that is Charles Dunn on any Guardian.
We're going to go ahead and staunch response to this if we are Charles here. But the second swing, in the swing is going to come ahead. And with +3, I don't believe Charles has a way to stop this, which might mean it's time for Kassai to get paid. She gets the damage across.
Go!
The sword is swinging. Bravo takes the hit finally. And she has been paid for her sellsword services.
Yeah, and again, Colin's so sure of that he's happy to spend a resource into the Iron Song versus here. Courage token a little bit less threatening than it is in like a Dawnblade Dory's playstyle, where it is a break point on a naked Dawnblade. But here now, Colin gets that extra little boost here. Doesn't quite have the snowball potential of what Dory has, but this hand here, the Syncball, I think there's a commanding performance there as well, which, again, if you can combine it with the Centauri Saber, your opponent really doesn't want to block that. Seeing 3 gold on the other side of the table, if you're Charles Dunn, it's a little intimidating. The deck count is equal between these two, as I've just had pointed out to me. So,
I was getting ready to see if Colin was going to throw this Sink Below down. I believe that's a Crippling Crush that Charles was able to just develop in his arsenal. And it's pretty easy if you're Colin there to think, okay, I've got the easy 1-card 4 block. Let's go ahead and just throw it down.
Hold on, but he's got such a red hand.
Oh yeah,
2 reds in his hand here. I think it's a blue Macho.
And here, because of the Courage token, this is now Nourishing Emptiness for 7.
Did we? Okay, we didn't need to banish. I guess there's no attack actions in Colin's sort of graveyard. Again, we're definitely setting up here. We're going to be drawing big. Yep,
Yeah,
dominate.
Dominate.
Woohoo! That is such a good way to use a Courage token. Like, that's something that Versus is really good with as well, with CNC and with any other sort of 6 power with an on hit. So here comes the equipment now. We're going to be pitching this away here, which really casts doubt on Charles's ability to throw that crippling in his arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, that crippling's probably going to sit there for quite some time. It's just the question of when and how will it come out and will it be deployed. We see another one heading to the pitch. So Charles, like you said, getting ready to start putting the pressure on. Once Colin's done his full setup, perhaps Charles tries to ignore the sellswords if they're created and just keep his foot on the gas.
Which I think is probably fine to some degree. If you're the aggressor in that situation, you're tearing apart your opponent's hand. If that's a Blade Flurry in hand now, and there's also a Raisin Army. So Colin, thinking very carefully now about his steps. Is he happy with 3 sellswords? Is that enough to sort of put pressure down on your opponent? You lose 1 per turn to the Titan's
Exactly.
Fist,
I was going to say, once you get them out, they can start getting picked off.
Yeah. And that's all of a sudden where, Bravo has to make a decision, right? Do I ignore them? Do I make it impossible for my opponent to attack with a sword beforehand? Another Sync thrown away. So Colin is either sitting on one in his arsenal already and is happy to expend them here, or he's just, really trying not to leak too much damage now as we head into this next phase of the game. But it's a 3-carder. It's a Glint the Quicksilver in hand there as well, but 2 of them, in fact. So
I think he put a Raisin Army to the bottom with that Sync, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
He's not ready. Yeah. That's fine. Glint here, of course, will... Well, you have go again anyway, so you're fine. A hot streak getting swung in here. Glint in the pitch zone, but
Yeah, you got the Quicken token off of the Civic
That's
Steps,
right.
had to be donated. So that's not something Charles wants to do. He doesn't want that Quicken token to actually get value, but because of the Courage token that Colin was able to develop the turn before, makes it so Charles' hand was somewhat forced.
Did he activate Versus this turn? He's got 2 floating.
I don't believe so. I think that's just from his last
Yeah,
turn.
okay. All right, here it is. Blade Flurry comes in. Charles opting for the no block. So I think the timeline for the deployment of that Crippling Crush has moved up on us, Mr. President.
All right, let's go ahead and activate the Versus now.
And realizing his opponent's not blocking, he's priced into throwing a couple of more of these on hits in. What is that card in his arsenal? I wonder. Here is Centauri, Saber, threatening a Courage token, coming in for 4, obviously getting buffed by the Blade Flurry.
You can see both these players are locked in, making sure they have exactly the right information on the board. Charles here playing very defensively, has fallen down to 26. Both players have been sitting with life totals pretty close. It looks like he's just going to go ahead and take that 4, which, like you said, must mean something big is coming against Colin.
Cracks the knuckles. It's time to send it. Tunic counter is also up here. We got Staunch, Starstruck, Chokeslam in the hand. And here comes Starstruck, dominated. This one is absolutely terrifying. That's a crush effect that can essentially time walk you. And Colin threw out Sink Blows the last 2 turns in a row to eat up a weapon attack. Does he have one in his arsenal?
Does he have a
Ooh.
Has to just go ahead and take the 6 there. So now can only present attacks with, I think, 6 power or more.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, yeah. If you take 4 or more damage, which you have done, the only attacks you can play or activate during your next turn are attacks with base power greater, not equal to, greater than damage dealt this way.
Yeah, so Colin falling all the way down to 19, just has to activate the Versus and pass there.
And this is something that you like as a warrior, admittedly, one trick, something that you learn a lot playing against Bravo. It's like you can throw your D-Reacts, your Sinks and such at their weapon swings, whether it's Anathos or Titan's Fist. But when they come around to throwing a dominated attack and you don't have that available, it can cause you to lose your control of the game. Especially a deck that is playing Tunic and Crown of Dominion. You have Dynamo, but you do not have a Freak. You cannot just throw all your armor in front of one of those really punishing on hits here. So the question is for Colin, like how, you can't really play around that, right? Got absolutely time walked, just passed up, and now Charles is the aggressor. Enlightened Strike for 5 coming down. Of course, it has go again. Charles can follow it up with a Titan's Fist here. So now Colin, as his life total gets slimmer, is being forced to part with some cardboard.
Yeah, 100%. Colin here, all of a sudden, life totals are such a factor, a relevant factor in a way for him that he's been sitting kind of pretty before this. Going to go ahead and start the turn off with the hit and run. Next sword attack gets the go again. Charles sitting at the 22 to Colin's 16. We have found the goal, but now at this point, is Charles able to just present enough pressure? This hot streak's going to be coming in for 2 with the go again.
Yep, Colin ensuring that. Now we're going to our less efficient go again enablers, right? Open the turn with a blue hit and run, as opposed to having a Blade Runner available in your hand. This is now, as the exhaustion starts to set in, as your deck size really starts to become limited, your options are a lot less exciting. This one does not carry any sort of buff here. But, Charles, we've got something I would have liked to see maybe from Colin is I wonder just how brilliant he is. Like, is he tracking the number of these D-Reacts left in the decks here?
And looks as though we are going to go ahead, and I believe we activated the Iron Song Versus on that attack.
It's been left sideways for a little bit.
It has. No Courage token generated. I saw Colin point to it, but now Charles is once again just taking some damage.
He is the aggressor and he knows it.
Yeah.
Again, when my opponent puts his cards like that and they go straight to the pitch, I know I'm effed. I just know I'm gone. Here it is, a dominated Crippling Crush coming in for 11, saying, if this crush effect hits you, discard 2 cards. And Charles has firmly gotten himself into the driver's seat now after really grinding Colin's teeth to stumps.
I believe we have a Steel Blade Shunt off of the Tunic, so we're not going to get crushed here. It's part of the reason you run the Tunic in this Kassai list is for those Steel Blade Shunts like you were alluding to earlier.
It's a great in a long game.
Yeah, 100%. Charles, I believe, was able to establish another 0 for 4 defense reaction in that arsenal. Going to be huge. We're going to have to see when that gets deployed. First, hot streak. Currently no go again.
Yeah, opening with a hot streak is can be a bit of a signal here by the Kassai player that there's no sort of additional way to confer go again.
Fascinating change of pace in this game. We've seen Colin be so content, so happy to play for the long game. However, Charles is really showing, I'm ready to start putting the pressure on. This run-through is going to power up a Centauri Saber, but just with the Tunic counter and the Rampart, is Charles even afraid of 4 damage here?
But Colin has demonstrated the foresight in this game to, to be pitching those Razor armies continuously towards the bottom of his deck. He knows that it wasn't the time that he really needed. Okay, we're reaching for the graveyard. That's what I wanted to see, because you really want to start now keeping track of these defense reactions, because Colin might be thinking, I wouldn't mind a couple more, on hits here, actually connecting with some gold generation or something similar. So good time to make a mental note of those and try and. But does he expect 3 hold the line? I don't know. It depends what kind of read he has here. But Charles won't fully block this out. Buckling blow here will eat 3, and we will get some damage done.
Time for the single copy of Remembrance. So we have gotten all the way back to that point in the deck, folks. Let's see. We're going to grab a Spoils of War. Let's see. We're going to grab a second Spoils
Probably
of War.
3.
Have to imagine that's one of the most premium cards in the deck. 1, 2, 3 is the winner here. They're all going back in. They're getting shuffled. But Charles, he's been ready to take some damage because he knows at this point Colin's been setting up for the long game, but has he set himself up with enough life to get there?
You need that buffer, right? And that has dwindled. To be fair, these players have walked each other's life totals down just fine over the course of the game. Colin needs to shuffle those cards back in and then draw up his hand and then decide. So Charles is, maybe... Yeah, uncharacteristically speedy here now as he realizes he has a chance to sort of look to close this out before things get out of hand. He runs 2 copies of Remembrance, Charles does. So, those red attacks that we're starting to see thrown out will be able to be brought back into the fold. This Command and Conquer would be one of those here. So, Colin now at a point where it's like, man, I don't want to be given cards here, especially don't want to get caught with awkward defense reactions stuck here. Don't know what's in that arsenal.
Is what it is, I believe.
Oof.
The fascinating thing for Charles here is because he's put all that pressure on, he's come down to a point in this game where now all of a sudden Raisin Army looks much more threatening than it did when he was at 25. Now all of a sudden 3 Centauri Sellswords start to look a little more interesting if you're Colin. A couple 3 blocks being put in front of that Command and Conquer here. I do believe there's at least one other defense reaction in the arsenal, as well as maybe the hand. So don't want to let that just get eaten up by the CNC.
Some nice cards that Charles has put in his deck. Lots of different colors on those pitch strips, actually. Terra Sunder, Starstruck, I think, and then a Crippling Crush put back in the Bravo deck. And here, it's nice and thin. There's a good chance you're going to run into these. And basically every turn cycle, you can be really sticking one of those big attacks in front of your opponent here. And nothing but the hot streak for Colin.
And Colin, once again, keeping some defense reactions in the list, keeping that red Steel Blade Shunt ready for when we get to that point of the game. If we get all the way through the second cycle again, 18 minutes left in the game. Both players sitting at 13 and 14, sub 15. This is going to come down to the wire.
Starstruck in the hand for Charles there. He just drew that one up. So that's an option. Charles sees the hot streak and says, if I don't block this, it doesn't get go again. A completely reasonable way to play if I want to be leading the charge here. And here it is. Starstruck comes out. Not dominated, but still is going to be asking for a lot of cards. I mean, it's 10. The Crush is on 4. So, again, when you have Dynamo in your list, you don't have to give an extra card to avert the Crush, which is really handy. But Colin needs full grips to force damage. At least he has a Blade Runner here. So there's an easy go again enabler, but that actually gets thrown away. And yeah, we will throw... Oh, the Fate comes out here.
And we're going to go ahead and put that Nourishing Emptiness to the bottom. Looks like we're going to keep it for later. But the Fate Foreseen there, the one of in this list, a nice way to keep himself from getting crushed. Only take a couple points of damage. Looks like we have the Spoils and a Glint. That's going to be pretty threatening here.
Yeah, again, you already have go again. You just want to throw out the Spoils now, and you're going to be asking Charles to throw out and try and block here. And again, we'll get a deck count soon and get an idea of how both these players are tracking. Notice it. Colin definitely less cards in deck now as opposed to Charles. He's had to block some stuff, like 2-card blocking Command and Conquers and such. So I'd expect him to bring a healthy... I mean, I think Colin has to have had 70 sort of cards or so here. Here's a Fate. How many of those we got left? Maybe only 1 or less in the deck, but the Staunchers are still hiding out in Charles's hand.
Valiant Dynamo, once again, removing that counter. That card seems good, man. I remember
so
I bought that card a long time ago. I was like, I can't wait for this card to be good. It just seems busted.
You wonder why they didn't just make an adult version of
Old
Kassai Centauri Sellsword?
That's why.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of it, that's for sure.
Just a little hammer for 4 here. Looks like there's another Crippling Crush headed to the arsenal for Charles, ready to dominate if he ever gets the opening from Colin. The question is, Tunic counter on 2. I think that's a Steel Blade Shunt.
Steel Blade Shunt. We have an Overpower, a Harder Final, and an Outland Skirmish, I think, in the hand here. There's Shunt from Arsenal. Completely reasonable way to use it, especially if you're already sitting on one more and you can develop that with a Tunic counter up.
And it just flips the life total. Colin able to gain a life and deal a life to Charles just like that. So a
good,
nice
right?
little,
I like
nice little
that.
play there from Colin. And the Tunic's up to 3.
Yeah.
We have the Raisin Army in the hand here. Or it looks like we're just going to go ahead and keep it around because this hot streak right now doesn't have any go again.
Yeah, again, we need to attack with a sword, right? But for our Centauri cell swords.
So if we just develop them now, they'll just be sitting there, sitting
right.
ducks, ready to die.
A whole lot to do. Charles, looking down. Yeah, again, is that yellow staunch? Yellow staunch.
Oh yeah, he got 3. He got 3 yellow staunch, my
It's
brother.
just a crime against humanity. Someone get Geneva on the phone immediately. Like, this is, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. So again, yeah, still plenty of D reacts to play with, but they don't feel nearly as good thrown at sort of allies.
Looks like Charles here just going to go ahead and take the 2, head on down to 9. You know what that means? Got to be a big old dominated attack.
Again, the
yep.
steel blade shot
Right in the arsenal. There's a crowd behind us watching through the window, folks. This is the barn burner of the day. The two of the 4 O's. Charles Dunn going to go ahead and perhaps activate the Bravo here. And just throughout that,
all right,
Starstruck.
10. So the steel blade shunt plus the dynamo means you're only taking 3. If that's a red shunt, right, that is pretty important. I think it was red. Card, dynamo, Tunic shunt. Nicely done. Really focusing on preserving life. It says 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 covered. It's a blue shunt, so you needed a little bit of extra help there, but you got it. Again, Charles really taking that turn off to develop, you know, that big Starstruck turn. Obviously coming from Arsenal, and does get shut down. But Colin is down to 3 cards here.
Time to activate Kassai for Colin. If we're able to raise an army here, Colin is able to just immediately threaten lethal. As soon as he gets the raise an army off, as soon as he gets the sword swing, gives it the go again, those 3 Centauri cell swords will threaten Charles's entire life total. So the question is he able to find the go again? Looks like it's just going to be the Spoils of War, giving the go again. Oh my goodness. And threatening a gold generation on hit, pitching the Raisin Army. Is Charles able to sniff it out? Like, hold on. You pitching one.
Yes, he is good enough. I think he is absolutely good enough to know what is waiting. So this is now Colin moving in towards his own endgame strategy. We're 13 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock. Spoils also, I mean, if there's any copies of Blood in Her Hands in the deck as well, like this.
I don't know. He's been blocking with them.
Super relevant.
No pitch floating at the moment for Colin, so any Centauri Cell Swords again would just be left to die.
Is a 3 staunch response hand? Or is that 4 staunches in his hand? I think that's 4 staunches.
No way.
That's 4 staunches in his hand.
Oh my gosh.
I can't. Get me out of here. This is so wrong. Oh, my goodness.
Staunch response, though, that's pretty bad against Cell Swords.
Not great. Yeah,
Those
again,
are
it's
terrible
really,
against
it's a really
those homies.
unwieldy reaction to have to throw out. And you want it against these big, tall attacks, but against these little 3 damage hits, it's not nearly as good.
Colin just snap takes. This could be the turn. We might see. That's a
yeah.
go again.
I want more cards.
Slice and dice.
All
It's going to be Centauri Saber.
+3 on the Centauri Saber here. It's coming for 5 or 6 if blocked by an attack action. It has go again. This could be big. Again, we don't see a Kassai activation on this turn. So
He's got a lot of gold.
It's a 3 goal, right? That is good. It's very, very good in this situation. Charles can't efficiently block out a bunch of Centauri. Like, he will leak 6 damage if he has to, right?
This is threatening 2 copper on hit. Slice and Die is going to pump up the next weapon attack by 3, but Colin, I don't know if that last card in his hand is a yellow or a blue. The question is, does he raise an army here? And if he has 3 pitch, all of a sudden he's able to just threaten Charles's life total. Oh my goodness. If this Kassai, hey, we're still very far away from the end of this game, but this.
I mean, are we? I don't know, man.
Warriors don't normally feel good into Fatigue Bravo, if I'm not mistaken.
You hear the footsteps, like the coming over the mountain behind you. It's.
And this is still 5 damage. This threatens half of Charles's life at the moment.
Yeah, and he can't block this efficiently either with like a hand that has 2 staunches in it. I think there's maybe a D-react in Arsenal, but like, how do you block this out and then be able to threaten that crippling at all, right? I just don't see how he's supposed to make that happen. It's a Terra Sunder, 2 staunches and a crippling. Is that a red staunch and blue staunch? Unclear. Yeah, this is getting extremely tight. And Colin is absolutely locked in. Red staunch. No extra pitch into that one, so 7 will do the job. It does also cover him from Blade Flurry, and here it is, my goodness. The army's been raised, baby. Let's make it happen. 3 Centauri sellswords will hit the table. They swing for 3. They are 3-2 allies. And if, of course, you've attacked with a weapon this turn, they have go again. How do you stop this relentless march?
3 damage, go again, and of course we can't forget there's that slice and dice that has been played, so the next sword attack gets that +3, so Charles has to think, there's Centauri sellswords coming, but also that hot streak is going to get sliced and diced. This is sick.
Yeah, I mean, again,
I'm loving this.
Yes, this is really tough. I mean, this is that sort of deterministic endgame scenario that, Colin is trying to create. That is
He has the
pitch.
blue.
Oh, buddy, he's coming in with 2 more sellswords.
Plus
Let
the
him
hot
swing, exactly, with that +3 on the backside. There is an absurd amount of damage to try and cover on a turn like this, and Charles is thinking, hang on, am I cooked? Was that a crippling in Arsenal?
It's a crippling. Yes, for sure. I remember him arsenaling that crippling. He doesn't have a D-react on this turn, so there's 6 more damage threatening on this turn.
There's 11, no?
Yeah,
with that sword swing at the
exactly.
backside.
6 from the Centauri, and then, of course, the hot streak here.
This is your United States national champion looking down the barrel, or rather, I guess the blade here of a number of sellswords accosting him, dragging him to the gallows for his crimes against fast play. That's right.
He does have the 1 floating for that Rampart of the Ram's Head. Looks like he's just going to go ahead and cash that in right now. Just block for 1, take 2, go to 7. We have 2 more pitch floating, so 1 more Centauri sellsword. Here's 3 more damage. Charles is going to have to give that final card. He's going to be left with nothing, and then Colin is going to have a full grip. If he finds a go again, that might be it.
Yeah, he needs a go again source, and I don't think Charles can deal with the width of this kind of turn here. Here's the block. Yep, take 2 damage.
Go to 2. There's 3 sellswords sitting ready to fight for their master. All their master needs is a go again.
They are licking their lips here now as there's more than just blood on the sand. It is Charles Dunn brought to his knees here by this immense pressure in the late game of Kassai of the Golden Sand. Turning up against a fatigue strategy and showing that you can do it. And is that a glint? The Quicksilver types 2 in the hand. You better believe there's go again aplenty. Here's the hot streak swinging in now, and you better believe Colin is far from done.
Hot streak again. We're looking at how many blues does he have? How many cards does he have that aren't attack actions anyway? But we know that there's a way to get go again anyway. Of course, if you're Charles, you see a glint the Quicksilver pitched. You got to imagine you're staring down the bottom of the barrel here.
Can Charles survive this turn? I think if there's like a staunch in his hand, yeah. So it's like threatening 11 here. Glint says we get go again. Obviously, we're not drawing a card here, and here come the sellswords now. So he's number 1. All of them threatening lethal damage.
Staunch response, again, so unwieldy here. You have to pitch 2 cards into it. That doesn't feel good when you have 3 sellswords coming at you. Here's the second.
Okay, eats that one up here. He'll be able to eat the third one as well. Come in with the sword swing on the backside. Staunch is going to be pitched into Rampart of the Ram's Head to at least keep Charles above water. But your boy doesn't have any equipment. No cards to play with on his turn. That card stuck in Arsenal, which I think is still that crippling crush. And Colin, he's coming back for a 3rd round.
Does he find the go again here? The Heart of Findle, the Overpower, the Raisin Army, no go again on this turn. The question is,
can he get it from this?
With the Overpower, is the Overpower enough to just finish it here?
I mean, that's a blue overpower, so that's
exactly.
+4.
That's a lot of damage. And does he have a non-attack action card to block this hot streak? The answer is no! The answer is no!
way! He blocked it with an attack action. Charles had no choice.
We've been talking about it all game. By the end of the game, you're just going to have attack actions left.
He couldn't just block with the Rampart anyway. And here come the sellswords and the sword on the back. There it is. Unreal. Colin Eriksen topples your current national champion. Charles Dunn falls to the relentless onslaught of Kassai and her Centauri sellswords. And finally, we really get to see what this new hero and heavy hitters can do.
Oh my goodness. Huge shout outs to both these players. Charles, truly one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. I remember when I met him, I told him, I was like, dude, I kind of thought you'd be like a little more, crabby with your fatigue reputation, but he's truly like the kindest, warmest guy. With this, though, you have to, when fatigue strategies are so sometimes, challenging to get through, you have to come to the tournament prepared to beat fatigue if you want to get through Southern California. And Colin Eriksen, the 19-year-old...
I'm telling you, I came into this game saying he reminds me of Brody Spurlock. The guy is relatively new to the game, but he's genuinely brilliant, like a brilliant player, and he really showed it here. It's a fantastic deck. He was ready for a longer game. He just had a really grindy Victor matchup to get through as well. So you're feeling fatigue now, but bringing in the Tunic, having the shunts when you need them, maintaining sort of enough deck density to go the distance against, one of the most well known, maybe if not the most well known sort of slow sort of fatigue style player in the entire Flesh and Blood world. And yeah, you've got to be feeling great about that. That's homegrown talent here.
Look at that. People in the back stoked to see the new kid take down the national champ. But Charles isn't going anywhere. He's so good. He's X1 moving into this next round. He's chilling. But you have to feel good if you're fans of these new heroes. If you want, we've been hearing from fans of Flesh and Blood for quite some time now. They would like the new heroes to make an immediate impact into Classic Constructed when they join the fray. And if Kassai of the Golden Sand did not just show you that she can beat one of the most powerful strategies in the game when you don't have a plan. Colin came in with a plan and he executed.
You cannot build a deck in Flesh and Blood right now that I think is more effective at blocking, playing defensive, maintaining life, and pushing your opponent to fatigue. And again, like these strategies to break this have existed in Flesh and Blood for quite some time. Right? Like Dromai, obviously, famously very, very good at developing the onboard presence that really threatens cards for efficiently or for free in many cases. Chain was doing it, of course, with Eclipse, with that sort of endgame approach here. There's a few of those methods that we have seen now. And once again, this is the kind of set where, I mean, Brian Gottlieb said it, like, in heavy hitters, like, it's going to be hard to fatigue, not only in the limited format, but so many 2 blocks, but with these options for the later game. Kassai will grind out that sort of long mid game, and if you can't overcome her, if you can't outvalue her across those turns, she will have a almost deterministic win condition established against you, which is something that the Guardians of old, the defensive players, sought to create here. So it's great to see a fatigue strategy overcome by this aggressive play. Like this is, Kassai is not necessarily like always above rate, right? Like she's very straightforward. She's like throwing 2 card 7s at you a lot of the time. But you're gaining that, you're accruing that value over the course of the game. You have a goal to start with, right, with that Crown of Dominion. Just need a 2 more goal to do that. That's very scary.
I feel like we've been spoiled. Talk about spoils of war. We've been spoiled for games here. Both of the games we have gotten to catch together have been absolute barn burners. That was an incredibly exciting match between Colin Eriksen and the U.S. national champ Charles Dunn. Both of them doing very well. Now Colin moves on to X&O, 5-0 on this Kassai list. So we'll be checking in with him most likely in our top 8 of the tournament and see if anyone's going to be able to take down the young master of that new deck. And I think we're probably getting ready to take a quick little break.
Yeah, I think we will take a breather after that.
Move on
Slobberknocker
into the next. What was that?
Slobberknocker.
Okay,
yes.
We're going to take a short break.